November 5th. Officially call this meeting to order. And I know that if you're just joining us, please go into the chat room and let Brian know that you're here. The first order, as always, is did we have a flag, Brian, we could put up?
There you go.
Terrific. We have the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all join me. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we have a moment of silence and think about all those folks from Massachusetts are serving in the military around the world in these precarious times. We certainly pray for their safe return home and pray for peace. Thank you, everybody. So next item is the discussion and action, the minutes of July 18th. Any comments, corrections, or otherwise on those minutes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I make the motion.
Motion's made. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 I have to
Opposed?
abstain.
One abstention. Okay.
One abstention, yes.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much. The main order of business today is we have the Chief Operations Officer for the MBTA giving us a little bit of an update, and we'll take some questions. Brian, I don't know if you want to jump in for a little bit more detailed introduction, but I appreciate, Ryan, you being here.
I'd be happy to, Mr. Mayor. And so Ryan and I used to work together at the T. We spent a few late nights when it was snowing outside, figuring out how to make the T better. And he's gotten the chance to do that. So he was named Chief Operating Officer, which is the individual in charge of all modes of transportation by Phil Ang a few months ago. He's a career railroad official, been an engineer, done pretty much everything you can do on a railroad. And we are so delighted that you're here, Ryan. And I want to thank your Chief of Staff, Dierdre Habershaw, as well for facilitating this. So if everybody could just mute while Ryan is giving his remarks. Ryan and Dierdre, I've made you co-hosts, so you can do what you want, but the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great, Brian. Thanks so much. And thank you very much, everyone, for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to get to know all of you. And I think more importantly, for you to all to get to know me. Brian certainly gave a good indication about where I come from, but formalities aside, my name is Ryan Coholan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the MBTA. As Director Kane mentioned, so that is responsible for all the modes of transportation: commuter rail, light rail, heavy rail, ferry, bus, paratransit, in really facilitating the operation of the entire organization. Some of my experience, my history, prior to this role, I was the Chief Railroad Officer for the MBTA for the last several years. Where I was responsible for strictly the commuter rail and the railroad assets and infrastructure owned by the MBTA. So that was locomotives, coaches, track, signals, the whole 9 yards. You know, and we were able to do a lot of really great things with commuter rail in that time frame. We weathered, you know, lots of significant issues, including all things COVID, and we came out of that really setting the benchmark for commuter rail operators across the country, where, you know, it was recently published, MBTA's commuter rail ridership is just below what it was prior to COVID, and that is a very high return of ridership when you look at other commuter rail operators across the country. Some of the networks I'm in, we talk a lot about ridership, and when you hear other operators talk about still, you know, in November, December of 23 at 50, 60% of the ridership that it was, and where they're telling the story about 93, 94%, you know, I think that is a testament to what we've been able to do with commuter rail here in Boston. And really, when Phil Eng asked me if I would entertain the idea of sort of stepping over the fence from commuter rail, my response was, well, we should talk. And I think that then that is in no way, you know, uh, no way indicative of the situation. It was more along the lines of my experience is railroad. Prior to the role of chief railroad officer, I had been hired by the MBTA as a railroad operations manager. And prior to that, most of my railroad career was as a locomotive engineer. I still, to this day, maintain my locomotive engineer certification. I live in the South Shore. Not uncommon for me to operate my train either into Boston or out of Boston, just to keep my qualifications up. And that sort of represents my management style. I'm very hands-on. And I think that is a critical part of the mission at hand and what we need to do to turn the ship that is the MBTA. And I think that as the relationship between the new leadership of the MBTA, this board, and as that relationship grows and improves, I think we're gonna get a lot of great stuff done. And I think that was the big driver of what we can do, what the potential is with this leadership team. And hopefully a year from now, we all look back and go, wow, that was a really tough time, but look where we are now. And it's certainly not going to be the efforts of one, it's the efforts of all. And I think with that, I would like to pause. I think for any of you that do know me, I can talk for hours about this stuff. But I'm going to hit pause there. And while if anyone has any questions right now, I would like to introduce Dierdre Habershaw, who is chief of staff to my office. And when I talk about people who made it so I wanted to see what we could do, Dierdre plays a vital role in just that. She stepped right up to the opportunity, and it's because of her that I'm so interested in making the changes. But Dierdre, please introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I am Dierdre Habershaw. I am Ryan's chief of staff. My background really comes out of municipal service. I worked for a number of years at the city of Boston on a program that some of you may be familiar with, the UASI program, which serves the Metro Boston Homeland Security region, which is made of Boston, Brookline, Cambridge, Chelsea, Everett, Revere, Quincy, Winthrop, and Somerville. And did a lot of stakeholder work with folks in public safety within those municipalities. Worked on that program for 7 years at the city of Boston before coming here to the T roughly 4 years ago. Have worn multiple hats at the T in my time here, including overseeing our contracted bus services within service planning. So overseeing the alternative service for the Orange Line surge, which in my estimation was maybe the most successful aspect of that endeavor. And so I've been working in that capacity for roughly a year before being asked to step in and help with this. So my background is in city planning and urban affairs. And one of the things that really excites me about working at the T and working with Ryan and all of you is I know how vital transportation and public transit is to thriving communities. I am a Dorchester resident. I've been a lifelong resident of the city of Boston. Have never in my life driven to work. So I think Ryan and I balance each other quite a bit in terms of, he has the larger footprint railroad geography. He can probably draw the map on the back of his hand of commuter rail service and the communities that are impacted or supported by that service. And I have a very strong urban background and understanding within the Metro Boston region in the transit system and the challenges we have there and the importance of what we're trying to provide to your customers or your constituents. So thrilled to be here. And I'll hand it back to you, Ryan.
Great, thanks. And I mean, Dierdre, you highlight the importance of understanding the customer base. My perspective, is largely driven by commuter rail, railroad, scheduled service, right? The train shows up at 8:33, not 8:34, 8:33. And I think that the experience that you have brought, and certainly just the time you've taken to educate me more so on, a headway-based service like the light rail and the heavy rail, the bus service and your knowledge, yeah, it is what I would call as close to a perfect balance as you could ask for. So I hope if anyone has any questions about my background, or any further questions, I'm happy to answer any. And then really, I would love to think from this group, I would love to understand probably some of the items that keep you all up at night. I think that it's important to hear the feedback, whether it's good or bad. And I think that's how we get better as an agency and deliver a better service.
Well, thanks, Ryan. So why don't I ask folks to use the raise hand function so that we can sort of try to put a little order around this. I also just want to note our two vice chairs are here today. Thank you, Mayor Longo Cohen of Medford and Mayor Reardon of Newburyport for being here. Much appreciated. I also want to welcome Mayor Verga from Gloucester and Mayor O'Connell from Taunton, as well as all of our city councilors, select board officials, select board chairs. We do appreciate, I certainly appreciate all that you all do to represent your communities here today. This was really envisioned as an introduction to Ryan and Dierdre. Ryan is the person, I would say, with his finger on the pulse of the T the most. And I can attest that I have been on trains operated by Ryan. We made it to Cape Cod on the Cape Flyer once without any incidents. And you were there the whole time talking to people, and it was great to see. So
Punctuation's important there, Brian, because we didn't just make it there once. We've made it there many times.
this is a guy, though, that he is on the system all the time, and he does take this very seriously. So I certainly said publicly when this was announced that I think Phil Lang made a strong choice. So I'm going to ask Ira from Revere, who asked me earlier if he could speak, to go first. He's having some issues. So Ira, if you can just unmute, ask your question, and then we'll go in the order in which hands are raised.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it. Nice to see everybody here. This is kind of my first time in a long time that I've been on an advisory board meeting. Revere does not have a representative on the board at this time because she has moved on to DCR. So I thought that some of my issues would come up here and I can get some answers and some actions, hopefully. Many years ago when the T removed a lot of the bus stops in my neighborhood, I covered the Shirley Ave area, down near the beach and Revere Beach Station, Wonderland Station. And I worked very well with Heather Yoon at the time. And we worked well together and we got things done. And I was pleased that we can work together and coordinate things better. The T has a lot of property in Revere. Two super large parking lots. We have the two train stations. We have a parking garage, and the city gets no money for those. And as a matter of fact, we pay, as everybody knows on the cherry sheet, a lot of bucks, for the T to be in the city. So we get very little out of it other than traffic and, buses all over the place. We worked with you guys to put a speed lane on Broadway, for the buses early in the morning, and, whether that's working out or not, I don't know. It's not my neighborhood. But some of the things bus stop related that I have, we had one issue on the 411 down on Oak Island Street next to the Satter House, where it was on the block to be removed. And there we have almost 400 senior citizens, many walkers and wheelchairs. And the proposal was to make people move to other bus stops. Now, here we have senior, like I said, senior citizens and disabled people having to walk an additional 1,500 feet, and which is very difficult for folks. I even worked with your folks to have that bus stop enlarged so the buses can get closer to the curb for these folks. And Mr. Eng, Chairman Eng, came down to the SATA house to let the folks know that that stop would not be removed as scheduled, at least for a year anyways. And I'm still getting a lot of feedback from the residents down that neighborhood. The other issue is when they changed the routes on the 411, they eliminated Ocean Avenue bus stops. I think there were 2 or 3 bus stops down there and one on Beach Street. I didn't realize it back last May when they had the regional meeting that this was on the chopping block. And a lot of folks on Ocean Avenue, we have like 2,000 folks on Ocean Avenue. And even though Wonderland Station is in between, again, we have a lot of disabled folks in those buildings. And walking that additional 800-900 feet is difficult for them. So we were upset that those stops were removed. And then there was one on Beach Street at the corner of North Shore Road that was removed. And many years ago, we let you folks put a bus stop there. And we even gave up some of our property for an indentation in a little park. Now that bus stop is gone, and I've requested that the park be reverted back to the way it was before. There's still that indentation of about 6 by 10 feet that the shelter used to be there. So I've asked for that to be reinstalled the way it was when we gave it to you.
Ira, can you get to your
Yes.
question, please? Because we do have other people that have
Well,
questions.
the issue is, and the question is my complaints, that I want these things solved.
Understood. So why don't I give you a call afterward? You can give me the list and we'll make sure that we get everything to the T. Dierdre, I understand you're taking notes on this as well. You got all those bus stops in question? And there's Deirdre's email. So we'll
I
work
may not have
together.
gotten every stop, Brian, but I have taken some notes and can bring this back to service planning and our bus stop coordinator.
I think between your notes and my notes, we probably got it.
I know Julie DeMauro from Revere has been working with Miles Taylor on one particular stop, on a shelter that you guys want us to install on one of your bus stops. So I have issues, and I don't mind working with people, but I think it should be a two-way street. And right now I don't think it's that way, but it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Josh from Natick, you are first with your hand up.
Thank you so much, Brian. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you. I am so grateful that the GM recognized some of the talent in our rail system with you and Jody Ray and others to work system-wide. So my question is, I'm trying to take a system-wide approach. I recognize that we were all appointed by our chief electeds, but that, we're here to think of the system as a whole, and that through Dierdre and others, we do have the opportunity to address individuals, local issues. And so mine would be, and maybe more a question for Dierdre, wonderful to meet you. How do you think the advisory board or members of the advisory board can be most effective at this time of transformation for the T? That, we have a unique role, in terms of our position, and with recent reforms, having the mayor on the MBTA board is, I think we're getting back to where we were many years ago, but that's a great level of access. So that's what I would just ask brief comments on, then I'll let other folks speak. Thank you.
So Ryan, before I respond, do you have any response before I?
No, I mean, I think, and Josh, thank you very much for the kind words. We have a long relationship of making a lot of changes, so it's good to continue to build on that. I mean, I think that the role that this board can really play with us is, look, there are the wish list is a mile long, and every community has their own wish list, and some align and some do not. I think that you certainly have a better grasp than we could ever pretend to, as far as what your communities are looking for from the MBTA from a service standpoint. And I think that the more that we understand what that is through your eyes and ears, I think that is super important for us as we build forward. Now, with that being said, we can't commit to everything. We cannot say yes to everything. We do have limitations. But again, I would rather create meaningful change or add meaningful services. And meaningful is, a term that incorporates, financial stability, resiliency, and customer service. What is the actual passenger getting out of that? So, that to me is probably the biggest role I could ask anyone on this board to play. Be the eyes and ears. Dierdre, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I think what I would add to that, specifically for our communities that are within our rapid transit footprint, is anyone who is familiar with the general manager's plan for our track revitalization program. Anytime we're taking out the rail line, and this is sort of wearing my alternate service hat, we've got to take all of those human beings that are usually underground and move them up to your surface level, where we don't control the territory. And so I think one of the ways in which folks, particularly from those municipalities, can help us over the next year is really, how do we move people on your roadways in an effective manner? How can we open lines of communication so we understand what your ongoing roadway maintenance projects may be? How can we move around those and sort of bringing to us what those challenges are that you are seeing in your communities that we can try and make better? Because one of the contributing factors to our infrastructure conditions is hesitancy to take out the rail line, right? Disruptions are very disruptive to everyone involved, including your municipal employees and your residents. So anything that we can do to recognize that we need to get through this to restore the track, and how can we work with municipal partners to do that in a way that is effective?
Thank you. I appreciate that. One word, collaboration. Look forward to other comments. Thanks.
Dan Albert, I think you're next.
Yes, hi. Very excited. Ryan, you look like an engineer, and I love the board in the back. It makes me feel like I'm involved in something that's working and important. So that's really great. Oh, and I also want to tell you, I'm in Marblehead. We're on the Newburyport Rockport line. My daughter moved out of the house about a month or two ago, and living in Alston, which means coming back to do her laundry. And she's riding it regularly. Our experience has been really good for her. And, recently I was on the train and there was a medical emergency, and I just was really impressed with how the staff on the train handled it. So, everyone has complaints, but it really has been good for us. So I just wanted to say that real quickly, and I have a couple of things, but I'm going to try to be as quick as possible. And the first one's just about, I don't know who to talk to. And I should say, I'm not an elected official, and that's kind of indicative of the way Marblehead's engagement with the MBTA has been. I really had to step up and do this. So it's been tough. We have one particular bus stop, but it's a general question. All of our stops are just signs on the road. It's a dangerous stop, and we have the data to show it. We have vulnerable road users, people fighting from the bus getting hurt. Asking the town to do something is a non-starter. How does the MBTA deal with that? How does the MBTA engage with the town when you have a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, the bus stops outside of the MBTA core system, they belong to the municipality.
Okay.
I think that an individual going to a community that is, facing the same financial struggles and prioritization issues that we all are. I mean, personal or professionally, right? You always have to prioritize where the money gets spent. But an individual going to a town versus, perhaps a combined voice, right? I think that, while we're the service provider, I can equate it to a lot of relationships we have at stations, perhaps, that we do not own, but we service, right? For example, the service down to Providence or Whitford Junction, Rhode Island, those stations are all owned by either Amtrak or the Rhode Island DOT. They're not owned by MBTA. And we do, while we don't control it, right, we do have a voice. And if the MBTA can help deliver the message to that community, you know, I don't want to make commitments that we'll be able to put the station in a safer location. But I think that there is a powerful voice when the service provider says, you know, there might be some better ways to do this. And we could probably provide some examples of how, you know, maybe what was once a dangerous location for a bus stop has now become, you know, safer,
Mhm.
you know, or easier to access.
So if Marblehead said, hey, we want to move this 100 yards down the road, it's not like MBTA comes in and says, no, you can't do that. Or is that
Well,
kind of
we-
the way it works?
It depends on what's involved with the move, right? Because
Okay.
obviously we need to be able to get the vehicles in and
Sure,
out safely,
sure.
you know?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
But
we also,
okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
so Dan, I would reach out to me. I dropped my email in the
Okay,
chat. I'll
great.
get you connected to the right folks within service planning. Because there are a number of considerations. There are design guidelines. We need to make sure the new spot is accessible. There is
Right,
a
right.
review process that needs to happen between service planning and the municipality. But yes, reach
Okay.
out and we will see what we can do to get that result.
Excellent. That is absolutely a great answer. And then the other one is a little more complicated, and I don't have a. So we have 3A, and it's all coming up to our town meeting in May. There's a lot of confusion around town. You know, people talk about us as being an MBTA community because we have a bus going through, which isn't the case. We're adjacent to Salem, we're adjacent to Swampscott. And I can put these messages out there, but again, it's one of these, can MBTA, does somebody have somebody that comes out for outreach to the community, or even, you know, that I can, you know, with local papers, I can say, hey, can you guys do an interview with this person? Because there's just not a lot of understanding of why this is being done. A town like Marblehead, and I know why it's being done, but you know, a town like Marblehead's like, oh no, we don't want any new people in town. But I feel like if people better understood the concept, is there somebody from MBTA we can engage with on that?
So let me take that one. So Dan,
Uh-huh.
the MBTA
Yeah.
Communities Act really has nothing to do with the T. It was put through by the legislature. And Marblehead is in the MBTA service district because it abuts a community that has a T
Right.
stop.
Right.
And that's state law going back to 2001. So Ryan and Deirdre, I mean, unless you really feel like you want to talk about zoning in local communities, feel free, but they don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the law is predicated on the T being able to provide additional service
Right,
once
right.
buildings are built, and that's what we're trying to focus on, is ensuring that that there is that service so that we don't add to vehicle congestion. Because
Yeah.
anyone who's been on 93 or 90 recently knows in and around Boston, it's a parking lot. So you know, I'm not sure who can help you, but if you need some help finding folks from the state, we had some folks
Right.
from speak to this body last year from
Okay.
Housing and Community Development. I'd be happy to connect you with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to put our guests on the spot on something that.
Oh, no. It was more, yeah, it's more just, you know, this is obviously about transit oriented development and just trying to explain that whole concept. But I appreciate that, and I will take it up with my representatives. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dan.
The chair of our commuter rail committee, Rob Shear.
Oh, no. Thank you, Brian. And thanks, Ryan and Dierdre, for being here today. As Brian said, I am the chair of the Commuter Rail Committee. And we've had some, I think, very useful conversations with Mike Muller and Abdullah Chaja from Coholan. So I hope we can continue that. And you're happy to hear about your commuter rail background. And if you want to come to our meeting sometime, that would be great as well.
I'd love to.
So, and, you know, just a few things I wanted to point out. One is just as a rider myself, I noticed that, especially since the new schedule, the conductors aren't very good at collection. So I don't know if there's a systems issue here. Would some choose to collect fares and others choose not to? And seems to be kind of 50%, maybe, you know, pretty much have. Some of them just decide it's not something they're interested in doing. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. The other thing, just in terms of Ashland, happy to, you know, thank you for the station's been renovated. I understand it'll be open soon. The Ashland station, of course, is one of the largest on the Framingham-Worcester line, which is a large line. So thank you for that work. The other thing I wanted to mention, which is something a little bit different than what we usually talk about, and that's safety. In Ashland, we experienced yet another commuter rail fatality. This was a young man who laid down on the tracks a few weeks ago. I don't know if you were involved in that. Very hard incident for all concerned. This is the third fatality in our small town in the last 5 years. Two were suicides, and one was an accidental crossing at our Main Street location. So I just would like, as a local official, to raise that, try to raise that profile with the T. I understand we've had discussions that you do safety reviews. I would like, I've not seen any of those reports. I would like to get some information about your safety conclusions and your safety procedures. These are not simple matters, of course. But I think I would like to know or be assured that we're taking all the measures that should be taken. The site in Ashland was a site of two of these occurrences. So I would like to know if someone has reviewed the physical layout and if there's any recommendations, especially that we can work with the T as a community to look at this prevention. Prevention, of course, is a very complex matter. It's a system-wide community issue that we have mental health counselors, and we're trying to constantly do outreach. But if there's anything about the physical location or the placement of fencing and signs, I understand the fencing in that area is rather limited. So I guess I just wanted to open up those lines of communication, get some, if you have any results of investigations that would be of use, especially the accidental one, or if there's physical layouts and ways that we can discourage or prevent these type of incidents, I'd be most appreciative of that. I did leave a message with Mike Mueller just yesterday, but I would like to, open up those lines of communication, how we can work together to prevent these kinds of incidents, because I'm sure everyone agrees that 3 fatalities is not a record that anyone's going to be proud of. And so I'd appreciate anything you could do on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, that this issue of mental health and how it intersects with the MBTA, we certainly see it on all modes, and I think we see it more pronounced with commuter rail, typically because we're outside of the downtown Boston area, and I think certainly those smaller communities, it's definitely a major impact when an event does occur. Speaking from my experience as a locomotive engineer, I mean, my last fatality was this past September, just a few months ago, and it is a topic that we work closely with any available partner. And several years ago, we saw a 200% increase in intentional acts involving collisions with people and trains. And looking at any available partner, we have a very robust partnership with state, local mental health. We reach out on the national level through the USDOT, through the Volpe Center. And it is a very difficult and challenging thing to figure out how to prevent. Intentional acts are just that. We found with our experience that fencing does not necessarily cure it. There is a fine line between what's a reasonable solution and what isn't. But I think that we have some pilots that we saw some success with grade crossings. Main Street Ashland is one of those locations that sees a noticeable amount of vehicle versus train incidents. And as you mentioned, other incidents too. So we had a pilot that we rolled out in Abington that highlighted grade crossings and how they interact with the railroad right of way, additional striping, you know, upgrades of traditional incandescent bulbs to 12-inch LED lighting. And, you know, I don't know if that solves the mental health aspect of this discussion. I do believe that the more attention we bring to railroad grade crossings, the better off we are. And the general manager shares that vision because we have rolled out some early works across the system with the installation of additional line striping and bollard installation at grade crossings. And that is really the precursor to the bigger project to add that gore striping to every grade crossing, to make sure that we have 12-inch LED lights at every grade crossing. All that is continuing for the next year across the entire commuter rail system. And I think that that will bring some improvement to the visibility of the grade crossing there in Ashland at Main Street. But it's a very tough topic.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the information on the grade crossing. I would appreciate if someone actually did a survey of the tracks to see if there's any best practices that should be done there. I appreciate your comments about the fencing, but I do understand that you had a safety recommendation report, which I would love to see that and see what it says, so we could evaluate our own infrastructure. And if someone has actually reviewed the site to see if there's any obvious things that can be done to discourage these sort of incidents. I know it's complicated and there are limits to fencing, but some areas might be easier to fix than others, or more obvious, as this has been a site of at least 2 incidents. So that to me means that there's something going on here we should maybe take a look at. But
Great.
Appreciate that. If I could follow up with Dierdre about getting some of these specifics, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, specifics to, you know, any actual Main Street Ashland incident. So that's tricky because we typically, those items end up in litigation for.
Certainly. And then that one, I understand you're in touch with our DPW director about that. So I'm not as, I think, but I would, in terms of the site of the suicides, if there's some kind of safety review that's called for, I just don't know if it's obviously a bad site, or if there's some simple fencing or signage or anything like that that could be helpful. That's why I was interested that you had done you had had a collaboration with a safety review and assessment. I'd like to see that. I've been told that report does exist, and that would be good to see.
Well, Rob, let me just jump in here and say, you know, as Alex Haggerty, the select board member from Abington, put in the chat, he wanted to express his gratitude to Ryan and the office for the additional safety measures at their 7 railroad grade crossings, including cross striping, bollards, LED lights, and cameras. Abington served as a pilot for the new safety measures for the rest of the Commonwealth, and has continued to see a decrease in accidents at our crossings as a result. I can't thank you enough. So I think we all hear what you're saying, and you've seen the stuff in the chat. We'll work with Dierdre and Ryan to get whatever is available to be shared publicly out to you, even if it's for some older issues that maybe have sort of been litigated. But I think everyone here agrees that we don't want to have to continue to talk about this, especially in Abington or anywhere.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Susan, you're up.
Thank you all for being here. It's great. I have many questions, but we'll stick to 2. The first one, our locals would not forgive me if I didn't ask this question. We're a bus-only town, and our bus service has not been restored to the levels we had pre-COVID, and coupled with the slow zones of the Red Line, which is often a connection people are making, it's making for a very long and sometimes just not doable commute for some people. Wondering if you could address that, especially because I have people fired up. They really want to take some action on this. So any advice you could give me to give them, or any updates, I'd appreciate it. Then my second item is, and Dierdre, you started to talk about this municipal coordination. I'm wondering what we can do, and maybe the T is already undertaking something to get better municipal coordination, not just for diversions, but just service in general. You know, I'd be happy to be a part of that conversation. And as a staff person in a municipality, I'm fully aware that a position in one town isn't going to be the same in another, and we're all so different. So just thinking about how we can get better coordination for all the things that have to happen to enhance the T. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Ryan, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, sure.
So two things. One, on the first comment, yeah, bus service everywhere is not what we ideally would like it to be. And I think a lot of that initially was the pandemic, and then coming out of that, just our operator shortage. And so we are trying to pull out every stop to bring in more bus operators, starting with the wage increase. We are increasing the capacity within our training school to get operators into the seat. And we do want to be at a place where we can start to restore service in various areas, and also start to implement the beginning of bus network redesign, which I know people have strong feelings one way or another, depending on what the outcome is for your community as part of bus network redesign rollout. But definitely hear you on the bus service piece, and I will reach out to my colleagues within service planning, Melissa Dulay and Wes Edwards, so we can get some more clear details of the impacts for Lexington. To the second part of your question, this is something that we are challenged with internally, because there are so many different departments within the MBTA that touch municipalities for different reasons, whether it's real estate, whether it's fares, whether it's parking, whether it's service. And so we are trying to structure ourselves in a more effective way between service planning, external engagement, and others. And so it is something that we have identified as an issue we need to address. And I think maybe it might be beneficial to have some conversation, maybe through this group, if you're able to send suggestions to Brian on ways you think you could see some of that partnering work better. Because we do want to improve that, because we do realize it is a challenge. In many instances, you might say, oh, I spoke with this person and they said that this was going to happen with my bus stop. And then you have a meeting with someone else on a capital project and they're like, what are you talking about? And just so trying to just get us internally on the same page so that you're getting a clear direction from the T about what is going on.
Thanks, Dierdre. I'll just follow up. I had coffee with Phil Eng last week and also brought this up, Susan, and he and I have some ideas as well that we'll be sharing with this group soon. So more to come on that. But it's mostly what Dierdre just said. So we're starting to align. So folks, just a time check. We got about 17 minutes left, and we do want to end on time. So brevity, if at all possible. Andy from the great town of Cambridge, city of Cambridge, excuse me.
Thank you, Brian. I guess one, I think echoing what other people said, I'm really excited to see you, Ryan, and also Dierdre in these new roles. I think we've all interacted through a number of projects or initiatives, and at least for I think our read from Cambridge, I think we're just as excited as anybody else that you two have these new functions at the T. So I think one of the things that maybe hasn't been addressed, and I just wanted to uplift from a different perspective. One of the things that we've been hearing at the city from a rider's perspective is there's a lot going on the system. And it's really hard to parse through exactly how particular commutes or trips are affected. And I think it will probably become even more acute as we enter into 2024 with all the subway diversions that will be happening. So as an example, somebody who's on our transit committee is a commuter from the Alewife area to South Station, and they looked at the materials on the track improvement program, and they couldn't really make heads or tails of it about, you know, how many days would their commute potentially be affected and things like that. I know that you all are I think turning the corner with the communications to the community and the public, but I wanted to get a sense from you all. What is your read of where the public is at in terms of just the broader public, not necessarily us, but two, are there particular initiatives that you all are taking on to really make sure that you know, all your communications are really taken from a perspective of a writer who may not be so clued in on all the changes that are coming?
Sure. I mean, all super fair observations, Andy. You know, I have watched in my tenure with the MBTA how we communicate internally and then externally. And I've watched the evolution from, you know, the first onset of social media and a passenger tweeting out something before we even know about it going on, right, in real time. I think that, the 2024 track improvement plan is the first of its kind, right? We have a plan to work through the entire year coming. And I think that baseline communications are based on real-time experience, right? I think that the plan to communicate those diversions is going to evolve, just like the actual plan itself is going to evolve. But we do have a baseline, right? We can highlight somewhere in this time frame in 2024, this is where we intend to be. I think that ridership outside of this group, I think that there's still a lot of people who are skeptical. Internally, though, the message from myself and Phil and really everyone from the top down is we need to prove to the ridership that we can deliver on this. And I think that the ridership is starting to see, to your point, they're starting to see the ship turn. When we completed the Ashmont diversion, that was the first real sign that, hey, this could work, right? This could get us there. I think that we're wrapping up a diversion on the Green Line right now, and we're going to resume service tomorrow. And I don't want to give up any surprises, nor do I want to count my chickens before they hatch. But I think that the ridership is going to be very happy with understanding that while there was impact, we provided a better, more resilient service. And I think that as we continue to do that through the 2024 plan, we need to deliver. We need to do what we say. And I think that communicating that out proactively in advance and not 2 days before diversion. Phil has brought in folks to focus on that. And as they get their bearings and get situated, it probably makes sense to make sure that they hear some of the feedback. Because I hear a lot of, I don't want to say criticisms, but I do hear that there are a lot of gaps with how we communicate to communities. And that's on us to fix. And I think it's heard loud and clear. And I think that we'll continue to evolve it, just like that 2024 plan will continue to evolve.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Bruce from Harvard.
Hey, Brian, how are you? And
Town of, I
Brian,
just want to say town of, not university, Bruce, right?
that's correct.
You never heard
Town
that
of Harvard. Because there's not enough characters in the name field. Thanks, Ryan and Dierdre. Brian's going to be tired of hearing this because we've been talking for a little over 2 years about the inability to repair, and now it'll have to be replaced because they're missing the charging stations at the Littleton 495 commuter rail stop. And last we discovered, I think Brian discovered for us, there seemed to be some confusion over which part of the MBTA is responsible for that, which may be the cause. But Ryan, you're the COO. Maybe you have an idea of how we can get charging stations repaired, since so many more people are trying to charge when they go to the commuter rail.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think my opinion on charging stations is from my previous hat, right? They're certainly not the railroad's responsibility. But I foresee an organizational shift within the MBTA that the finger pointing internally is unnecessary. At the end of the day, whether you represent commuter rail or parking or wherever the case may be, it's one MBTA. And I think that charging stations are one of those things that we saw come in really as a very short term, not necessarily fully baked thing. And I also could point to programs like the solar panels at commuter rail stations. At the end of the day, who owns it? Who maintains it? And it sounds great when you first say, this is what we're going to do, right? That's great. Quick win. But when it needs maintenance or to be repaired, it can't necessarily be everyone has abandoned ship and you're stuck holding it. I think that we need to look at things like charging stations. I mean, look, I think where society is at, we've proven that they will be around for some time. There may be a cycle that they disappear, but that's no time soon. And I think that we need to find a solution to the charging station issue, because I am familiar with the issue with 495. But I think that that's on us to figure out if this is something we're going to offer. It has to work. They can't just become coat racks, for lack of better terms, right? They need to work. So And I think how we design stations and station partnerships with those communities moving forward, I think that has to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was the vendor's job as part of their contract, it would be a solution, but that's great to hear. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, and Bruce, just so you know, I do bring up the Littleton 495 station chargers at almost every discussion I have with T folks. So
Yeah, I believe that. It's
we'll figure it out. We'll figure
yeah,
it out.
one day. It's good. Thanks.
No, thank you. Leonard Diggins from Arlington. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dierdre. And thank you, Ryan. And thank you, Ryan, for meeting with the Rider Oversight Committee so many times throughout the years. I'll be brief. So you mentioned that the commuter rail is back up to pretty much up to its pre-COVID ridership. That's impressive. So what have you learned from that can be applied to the T, especially the heavy rail? Thank you.
Yeah, in Leonard, great. I appreciate the kind words. I think that what we learned on the commuter rail side was the days of deciding what the service is going to look like for the public. I think those days are gone. I think that we need to listen to the public. And in commuter rail, we listened closely to what not just the folks in the Boston proper were saying, but we had the insight into other properties and sort of how they were restoring service. And as we built out plans and schedules, there was a lot of collaboration on the commuter rail side of North America, basically, where we were able to share strategies, right? And we're able to compare notes typically on like a 30-day basis. How's this working out for you? And I will say that with the partnership we have with Coholan, having some international insight, COVID in the United States was a little bit behind where COVID was in Europe. And we were able to get a lot of insightful information with what the return to service looked like in other parts of the world. And that was very helpful. And where we landed on sort of that hourly service throughout the course of the day, I for one, I use that schedule to my advantage all the time. If I need to get home earlier, I have options midday to still get to the afternoon's meetings and still get the work done and still kind of strike that balance. And if that is my case, that is the case for a lot of our passengers across the system. I think that as far as the core MBTA transit system, though, it's a different animal, right? It's a very different animal. And, we're at a point in flux where we are trying to rebuild the system to get headways back to where they need to be. We're trying to get operators in the door. I was going to raise it earlier, but as far as even bus services, with the recent agreement with the unions, I mean, we saw a 300% increase in applications for bus operators, and that's a big deal. And we can have tracks and trains, but if we don't have the professionals to operate those vehicles, we can't provide the service. I think we need to keep building on reliable service within the core of the system, within the heavy rail, light rail, and surface transportation modes. And I think we need to deliver the service ultimately that the passengers want, not necessarily the other way around.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Leonard.
Okay, Dave Stevenson, what community do you represent, sir?
So I'm with the MBTA commuter rail conductors. I'm the legislative rep for the union.
Okay, so let me just take Duncan, who's a member, and then we'll do non-member questions last, sir. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Duncan from Needham, you're on, good sir.
Thanks, Brian. I'm delighted to see Ryan in his current position. I like if I'm muted. No? Okay, good. And I see Columbia Junction live there. I'm thrilled with that because I laid that out on graph paper with pencil something like 45 years ago, and it's still working. Question on the red line. There's a lot of attention on CBTC and red line transformation, and one of the things that strikes one is Needham people arriving South Station and trying to get in town or Cambridge. Those three stations, South Station, Park, and former Washington Downtown Crossing, have really, really long dwell times, and I'm just curious whether there are plans to try to manage those dwell times which might yield some real benefits relative to waiting for the CBTC equipped trains. Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, Duncan. I think that, we're well aware of the speed restrictions on the line, and when you cure speed restrictions on one part of, say, the red line, that's great for that section. Passengers traveling, but in that area that used to have a speed restriction, they see the improvement. However, in the area you mentioned, is within our, what we'll call the trunk of the system. So if I send a bunch of trains at 40 miles an hour into an area that's 10 miles an hour, I'm going to have a backup. And I think that's what we're seeing right now as we start to improve service on parts of the red line. Things are kind of landing on top of each other, which results in dwell times and slower run times. It just makes the service messy, right? It's messy. It's not smooth. So, but the 2024 plan has a full boat of work laid out in it to solve that problem within the trunk. And I think that you will see, as those speed restrictions come off, you'll start to see sort of that fluid operation, from Braintree and Ashmont all the way to Alewife. Things are just going to run on a continuous headway basis, and we'll lose that bunch up. And I think that is easier and quicker to implement than any, CBTC type solution. But it's great to see improvement on one part, but really to see the benefit, it has to be across the line to get the throughput that we need.
Okay, thanks. Yep.
Yeah, if I could just add one piece, that's all right. I know that we're short on time, but to Ryan's point, we should start to see in the next few weeks, the headways on the red line shorten up a little bit. And that is because of the work that we did over the last few months, the Ashmont outage, the weekend and overnight outages on the Braintree line, the work between Harvard and Central to lift some restrictions. We'll start to realize the benefits holistically, because now that we have taken off that runtime, we are able to schedule our trains a little bit closer together. It's only going to be about a minute on either end. But as we continue through the year, you will start to see those headways shorten up as we're able to knock off this excessive runtime.
It's great news.
Okay, thanks.
And Duncan, just to put a bow on the comment, a few people have commented on the boards that I have.
Yeah.
I kind of like to see what's going on. And
that tells you half of what you need to know about the whole rapid transit system.
Yeah, I mean,
that location.
That's sort of the world that I'm used to, and some things work. So this works.
That's great. Okay.
Duncan has one of those in his basement, Ryan.
We all do.
All right, Dave Stevenson, member of the public. I'll give you the last word, and then we'll have to wrap it up in 2 minutes.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Dave Stevenson. I've been an MBTA commuter rail conductor for about 18 years now. I'm the legislative rep for the union. I just had a question about sick time. Commuter rail workers are some of the only workers left in the state without any sick time. I was wondering if there's something we could do to work to change that in the near future. Maybe have the MBTA hold their contractors up to Massachusetts standards, especially with the Massachusetts earned sick time law. And that's basically it. I just want to congratulate Ryan. He used to sit in on our safety meetings 5-6 years ago. He was a guy I could reach out to if the union had something stuck in the committee. He gives a guy shot an email to, and he'd take care of it. So I think that's a great pick with Ryan in this new role.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
Okay, folks, so we have 1 minute left, and I'm sorry, we're not going to probably get to everything that's left on the agenda. I guess let me just, on behalf of the mayor, the chair, the two vice chairs, all the officers, your staff, let me also know this is Amira Patterson's last meeting. Amira is leaving us at the end of December, and we wish her all the best in all of her future endeavors. She'll be amazing. But it is 11:30, and we don't like to go more than an hour. So I guess Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in January. So look out for some emails from me, and 2024 is going to be great.
Thank
you to Ryan. Thank you to Dierdre. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor, I'm
guys.
sorry, you're back.
Thanks,
I
Amira.
apologize, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Take care, everybody.
Good meeting.
Welcome,
Thank
Aaron.
you.
Bye.
Merry
Take care.
Christmas.
Bye.
Take care.